What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Five Podcast, episode number 4. We got some very interesting games to break down for you from this week, second week of the college basketball season. So we're going to do that right now. I'm, of course, your host, Kyle Morello, and across from me on this very Zoom, Jake Copestick. How we doing?
Doing good. I'm bundled up a little bit here. I have my Penn beanie on. Got cold really quick outside,
Very
but the good
cold.
thing is we can stay inside where it's warm. Whether that's in a gym, whether that's in your living room, we can watch some Big Five basketball. We can break down, talk about it. So certainly warm inside. So still had some more games. We're right in the swing of things. Season gets started. You don't really have any downtime. We're kind of coming up on some with Feast Week about to start. So that we can preview a little bit of that, but doing well. Big Five is back. College basketball is back. We're right back in the swing of things. So let's get to it, man.
It's the best time of year. I've been saying it all along. It's the best time of year, and we're not even toward January, February, March, April yet. So uh very much looking forward to that. But we got a lot of college basketball to cover right now. It is the perfect time, of course, to get your Keurig out, get your pot of water out, make some hot chocolate. You like coffee. I'm not a coffee guy, but you can drink some coffee. I'll drink some hot chocolate. Bundle up because it's getting a little chilly outside and it's only gonna get worse. So college basketball is in full swing, and we have some games to go over from this week, Cope. So we're gonna get right into it. We're not gonna waste any time. I think the people really, really, really want to know our opinions about this Temple Vanderbilt game because let me tell you, it was a doozy. Temple was up 22-11 in the first half. They seemed to be very much in control. Vanderbilt came all the way back. It was tied 37 at the half, and then they went up by like 9 points later in the second half. Damian Dunn started going off. They ended up going to overtime. They were up with 38.6 seconds left in overtime. They were up 1 point, and they ended up losing the game 89 to 87. It was an incredible game to watch. I was watching on TV. I know you were at the DAC, so you weren't watching on TV or in person either, but I know you were following it. There was a lot of things that we can take away from this game. There's one I want to talk about a little bit later. I think you know what I'm referring to with that, but in terms of the actual game itself, what did you see that this is a game we talked about Temple should have won. This is a Vanderbilt team that isn't great. Yes, they're a Power 5 team, but they're not, a typical Power 5 team that has that overwhelming dominance. What did you see in this game that, kind of led Temple to the loss that they had?
So first and foremost, I want to come out and say like it's really bad to see another loss like this, especially with like the greatness that Damian Dunn's playing with. Currently, the leading scorer in America resides at North Broad. He's top of the entire NCAA D1 in scoring, and it's a shame that they have to waste that again. He had another great game. He had 38 points. He was extremely efficient shooting, 13 to 18, 7 to 9 from three. Like he was the end. He is and always will be the engine for them on offense, but not really much production elsewhere. Caleb Battle had a bad game, only played 19 minutes. We'll get to him a little bit later. Jamil Reynolds played another good game. We finally saw Zach Hicks get out of a little bit of a shooting slump that he was in, knocked down a bunch of threes and had a really good game, which is something that you'll see a lot more from him. The way that he shot the first two games is not indicative of what he can do. He can definitely put up games like this where he can get open, he can knock down threes with guys in his face, he can hit them consistently. So there's that. But defensively and rebounding too, again, it just kind of reminded me of the Wagner game a little bit. Defensively, I mean, Miles Studi for Vanderbilt was a leading three-point shooter in the SEC last year, and they gave him way too many open looks. He was 7 to 10, had a lot of really good looks, but some of that's good sets. I really had to give Jerry Stackhouse some credit. After watching the film on this game, he had some really, really good sets drawn up. He had a really nice hammer set to get Studi at 3 in overtime. Like, you really have to give a lot of credit to Vanderbilt with the stuff they were running on offense. And then defensively, playing a 1-2-2 zone defense where they were able to throw Temple off a little bit. Jamil Reynolds was able to score inside a little bit off that. They were able to adjust to it. But defensively, just like the 3-point line killed him. Liam Robbins came off the bench. He's a 2-time transfer. He was at Drake for a little bit and then did a year at Minnesota before coming to Vanderbilt. Like, he had 20 points off the bench. He especially offensively killed him. But these guys just hit some tough shots. But at the end of the day, like, it just wasn't, they didn't play a complete game. And that's kind of what it was at Wagner too. This team's just right now, they're too inconsistent. Like, I expected really big things from them this year. I honestly thought they would start 3-0 when I saw the slate and their schedule, like I did in the preseason, but it just wasn't a complete game from them. They were in control early on, like you said, and then they went down by double digits in the second half. They looked lost offensively at times. Without Damian Dunn, I mean, who knows what they would be right now? I mean, without his scoring output and his efficiency, his consistency on offense, like there's really not a whole lot of other. I feel like consistency with this team other than that. Defensively there was lapses, there was open threes given to shooters, and they couldn't put together a complete game. And I said last episode, I said, I really don't recommend you do this if you want to build a resume for March and you're going to beat good teams like Villanova, but then the teams like Vanderbilt and Wagner, who you should beat and be competitive with, and those should be wins. It's not like this is not going to work. This is not going to work come March. And it seems like they got more problems that we'll talk about later, but it wasn't a complete game from them, even though they had good performances from Hicks, from Reynolds, a great game from Damian Dunn. They need more scoring. There's a lot of things I can point to, but the 3-point line, they didn't defend very well. And then offensively, they just need some more from some other guys.
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing to see, especially after how great they played against Villanova. And, we figured that they responded from the game against Wagner. They showed that mental fortitude like we talked about in our first couple episodes. And they came out flat. I mean, they didn't come out flat. They were dominating early, and then they became flat later in the game. Like you said, if it wasn't Damian Dunn scoring, it wasn't anybody scoring. They did go to Jamil Reynolds early in the second half, and it seemed to be working, but they went away from that. Zach Hicks did play really well, which I'll give him a lot of credit for because, when he's on, he might be one of the best shooters on this team. So definitely give Zach Hicks credit for that. There's the one thing that I think we need to address, which I'm not going to lie to you guys watching this right now. We almost had an emergency podcast on Tuesday night to address this issue because at the time it seemed like a big issue and, maybe not as much right now, but it still seems like it could be something that's going to affect this Temple team. And it's Caleb Battle. He, first of all, didn't play well. He only had 2 points in the game against Vanderbilt. But it wasn't so much the play on the court. It was the fact that he wasn't on the court and Coach Aaron McKee benched him. And that was made pretty clear in the post-game press conference. And then you saw on Twitter, or maybe you didn't see on Twitter because he deleted it, but Caleb Battle, there was a quote that I don't know exactly what account tweeted it, but it was an account quoting Aaron McKee at the press conference saying, we benched him. I'm paraphrasing, but, it was pretty much saying that we benched him and, we want the guys who are wanting to be on the floor that are on the floor. And he did the laughing emoji in response to that. And it started gaining a little bit of traction. I think that's why he deleted it. But it's kind of a little bit embarrassing to see. How do you feel about this as a Big Five fan? He's someone who showed so much promise last year and, was averaging over 20 points a game. He might have been on his way to an AAC player of the year. And he's coming out this year and he just kind of seems selfish and not engaged. And that might just be in my opinion, but what do you think about the whole Caleb Battle situation?
It's a really unneeded distraction from the team, and also like the way they've come out. They're 1-2 through games where I feel like they easily could be 3-0. Like it's just an really unneeded distraction. Like they always say, like one bad apple spoils the bunch, and like he's like projected to be a big time scorer and a big time player for this team, and it just didn't happen in the Vanderbilt game. You look at that game. There was a sequence I saw in the first half of that game where he came in and I thought he forced a three, and then he forced a drive in the first half, misses a wild layup, complains about the call. He doesn't run back on defense. His man gets the ball, drives to the basket, and one layup. And then on the free throw attempt, he didn't box out the shooter. That was his responsibility. He didn't box out the shooter. He stood there, waited for the rebound as it got tapped around. It got tapped right to his man, who then scored another layup. And then he kind of looked over to the bench and was like, why didn't we get the rebound? Like that was his responsibility to box out. It was a really, really bad sequence for him. But just a really unneeded distraction around this team. And the thing that's a shame is like you see the potential he has as a player. He can be a lightning rod for this team. If he would have had a scoring game like he had against Villanova, like we saw last year from him, they easily win that Vanderbilt game, and they moved it 2-1. But plays like that, like it doesn't really matter how good you are if you're not going to put in the effort like that. Like that goes for any sport and any level. If that stuff is going to happen, that's easily controllable and is an effort thing. Like you're not going to be in the game. And it was very telling, like for McKee to get in his press conference afterwards and say, "Yeah, I played the guys who I thought wanted to be out there." To hear that is not good. To see the response on Twitter isn't good as well. And the thing about this is like I just hope that he realizes the opportunity that he has in front of him. Like he has a great scoring guard and a great all around guard in Damian Dunn next to him who can handle the ball, who can score if he's asked to, of course. But this is a good team that I really think can make the tournament if they're healthy. I just hope he realizes the opportunity that's in front of him. Like you can be a really good player for a really good program on a team that can make the tournament. And once you get there, you don't know what happens. And to see it kind of fall apart like this when everyone in the offseason was like, oh, they're going to get Caleb Battle back. They're going to get him back. He scored in bunches last year. He was awesome for them. Like he's what they need to bring this team to the next level. And now to see this and to see it kind of unravel like that, it's really disappointing. And like, who knows what's going to happen with this the rest of the year and how much of a distraction it's going to be. If he's a selfish guy, if he's reading into his own headlines after like what happened last year with his great start. Like, I don't know that. I don't even really mean to speculate on that. The bottom line is that he got taken out of the game when he's a guy that can really help them and they needed his scoring. It wasn't there, but the effort plays weren't there. And when you're not scoring, you got to be able to defend and hustle and like just control what you can control. You can control your effort, your hustle, your defense. You can't really control if the ball goes in or not. You can't let that affect every other facet of your game. So to see that from a guy who's supposed to be a leader on this team, it's very troubling. And with the start they have, it could unravel and it could be bad. They could be in for a long non-conference slate if this doesn't get resolved and get together, which obviously as Big Five fans and Temple alumni and students, like we hope it does, but it's got to turn a corner or like this could end up being bad. I really hope this gets resolved because like I keep saying, like the opportunity that's in front of Caleb Battle right now is huge and could be really good for everybody involved if he decides to turn it around. We just don't know if it's going to happen. And what happened in the Vanderbilt game, if that's what it's going to be, it's going to be a long season for Temple from a guy who's expected to be a leader and a huge contributor for them.
Yeah, the word you used a little bit earlier is completely accurate. And it's disappointing. Like you said, like he was in the first 7 games of last year. I know he got hurt in late November, but he was that guy. He was averaging over 20 points a game. Like he was scoring in bunches, like you said. And hopefully he wasn't reading into his own headlines. I don't want to speculate, kind of like you said, but it's just disappointing to see him, acting like this. And I hope he's not being that guy in the locker room that's a me guy. We don't want me guys. Nobody in the Big Five needs a me guy like that. Obviously, there's talent there, and you can't deny that. And I hope he's able to use that talent to provide for this Temple team that, like you said, very well could make the tournament this year. They have the talent to do it, and he can be right there in that guard spot next to Damian Dunn. They could be one of the best scoring backcourts in the country. Like honestly, you mentioned Damian Dunn's leading the nation in points per game right now, and Caleb Battle averaged over 20 a game last year when he was healthy. They could be one of the best backcourts in the country. And backcourt play, as we all know, can get you far in the tournament if, it's utilized right. And I'm not saying this Temple team's going to go far in the tournament or, as of right now, they're not looking like a tournament team at all, but they need to be able to have him having the right mindset and being there mentally and physically to be able to make this tournament run that they should be on. They should be a team that can make the tournament this year. I have this Jets Cup next to me, and it kind of reminds me of the Elijah Moore situation with the Jets. You know what I mean? Like it's on a team that should be winning, well, was winning at the time, obviously, and still is for the Jets, but maybe not happy with his role, requesting a trade. Obviously, you can't get traded in college basketball, but like, you kind of draw parallels to that. I need a sip of water, but you kind of draw parallels to that. And it's like, you don't need to be selfish. You don't. Like, I know maybe if you're not happy with your role, you're not happy with the coach, like it does happen, but talk it out, get back on the court and do what you need to do. Be there for your teammates. This is a team that can make some noise. And I think he needs to realize that. And maybe it's part of the maturation process with him. I don't know, but I don't want to speculate too much because that's not fair to anybody. But if he gets his act together, this Temple team can go very far. Because if he scores more than 2 points, they beat that Vanderbilt team. And we're having a very different conversation right now about the Owls. than we've been having for the first few minutes of this podcast. So hopefully it gets together. We'll see what happens. We'll move on though. We have another game we want to talk about. We're gonna go to the St. Joe's and Albany game. A 99-79 victory for the Hawks. It was a good game for them. It was a very, very good game for them. They outshot the Albany Great Danes 56-41 in percentage points, of course. Eric Reynolds led the way with 32 points. He was 10 of 15 from the field, also had 6 rebounds. Lynn Greer had a very nice bounce back game, 19 points for him. What did you see out of Hawk Hill? Because this was a pretty impressive victory. You know, the Great Danes of Albany are normally one of the better lower major teams. So for them to outplay them the way they did, now it did get a little bit dicey late, but they were able to weather the storm and stave them off. So what did you see from this game?
Yeah, so we've been talking about it in pretty much every episode that we've had. Like this team's going to go as far as Eric Reynolds takes them. Like with Jordan Hall leaving, he's the guy now that's going to have to score. That's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. So, a 32-point game from him. Obviously, it's hard to average that many points. Not everybody's Damian Dunn, but as long as he scores like that, he has outputs like that, and he produces for them like that. Like this team can be very interesting and be very competitive. And good to see Lynn Greer bounce back too. He didn't play a whole lot while he was at Dayton. He was behind a huge freshman class that they have that's now stepped up and is now rising sophomores for them and playing. So it's a good situation for him to get some run, to actually, to get a lot of time and to be a major contributor for them. So, after not seeing that from him at Dayton, simply because he was buried behind the lineup and the guys that they had, like it's good to see him doing this too. So when you have a good 1-2 punch like that at the guard spot, like they do right now, Lynn Greer didn't shoot too well in their last game, but for them to do this and to produce like that, they're going to be in a lot of games if their guards can produce like that. And I think it's only a matter of time before Eric Reynolds is known nationally, because he's going to be the best player on this team this year. And as far as I'm concerned, like he's going to be one of the best players in the A10 as well. I think, with his output, with his like games like this, I think he's going to be a national name pretty soon, with just how good he's going to be for this team and in the A10 as well.
Yeah, I mean, he, obviously transferred from Dayton, so he's been in the A10 for a while. And Dayton's, at this stage, definitely a much more nationally recognized team than St. Joe's is. But actually, I was talking about Eric Reynolds for a second, not Lynn Greer. Lynn Greer, obviously he transferred from Dayton. He had a nice bounce back game. But Eric Reynolds, yes, he will be that replacement for Jordan Hall, which is a tough replacement, because obviously he's in the NBA now, or at least on the G League. But yeah, he will be someone who's going to be recognized very soon, and he should be. He's a very, very talented guard for them. And this was a coming out party for him. He's been in that lead role for him the first 2 games of this year. A 32-point performance is nothing to be snobby about. That's a very, very good performance. So good for him, and good for Lynn Greer too, bouncing back, because they need both of those guards to play well in order for them to have success this year. If Lynn Greer plays like he did a couple games ago and doesn't shoot very well and is inefficient, they're not going to go very far this year. And obviously the expectations aren't very high on Hawk Hill. Them and LaSalle, which we'll get to in a little bit, are supposed to be toward the bottom of the A10. But if they get that good guard play, maybe they can make a little bit of noise. They have the talent there. So we'll see what happens. But overall, it was definitely a good game for them. It was good to see them pull out a victory. And
Just real
we'll
quick,
talk.
I don't want to cut you off. I just want to make a point about
No, you're good.
Albany. So obviously, like we put on our Twitter the other day, it was a notification from John Rothstein that Justin Neely from Albany, who is projected to be one of their better players this year, if not their best player, one of their lead guards, he had torn his ACL and was going to miss this game. But off the court as well, their assistant Dwayne Killings, who we had talked about being a Philly guy, was at Temple for a number of years. He was suspended the first 5 games this year, and a lawsuit just came out late yesterday or today. He was suspended for. They didn't really get too much into the verbiage last year. It was just kind of like he was striking a player or like indecent conduct toward a player. A lawsuit came out today about a walk-on of his who was at Marquette when he was there and then transferred to Albany to be a walk-on for him. And this guy alleges that he was slapped in the face and thrown against a locker to the point where it drew blood from Killings in the locker room before a game. So
Damn.
he just served and got done with his 5-game suspension this comes out and finally everything kind of lets loose and we find out like just what happened. So the situation definitely to monitor for Albany. And this is something that Dwayne Killings came out and admitted, like he admitted his wrongdoing way before. That's why the suspension was being served. So something to monitor. I read into it. It didn't really didn't sound too good at all. It sounded like he was trying to blackball this player and kind of badmouth him to other college coaches so he couldn't transfer. I'll see if I can find that article. We'll put it in the link on our Twitter if you guys want to read it. But not really good situation brewing at Albany. He's only in his second season too, so I really don't see this getting any better. I really don't envision he coaches there much longer. Maybe toward the end of the year. I think once all this comes out, and he not only is he being sued, but his AD and the university are being sued as well. So not a good look for Albany as a whole. Not a good look for Dwayne Killings. We'll continue to monitor it. Like I said, I'll try and get the article down there so all the facts can be there on our Twitter. But not a good situation brewing there for the Great Danes. We'll see how much longer this goes on for. I don't imagine this is a situation that blows over though when it comes to player safety. So something that we'll keep our eye on. But if you ask me, I don't think by the end of the season Dwayne Killings is still the head coach at all. But he sounds like a pretty ugly situation that will probably only continue to evolve with this lawsuit that just came out.
Yeah, I honestly did not know that. So thank you for bringing that to my attention and our viewers' attention. Dwayne Killings, shame on you. College coaches need to realize that they can't just like control these 18 and 22-year-olds. It's really messed up. And that's not just for basketball, that's for football, that's for field hockey, that's for ice hockey, that's for tennis, that's for whatever sport. There are some scummy things in college, and we don't need to, go on a whole tangent and get into all that, but just treat your players well. They'll respond to you if you just treat them well. Like, it's really not that hard, college coaches. So get better. Dwayne Killings, it's not good. So yeah, not a good look for the Great Danes there, but hopefully that situation gets resolved for the best soon, and we'll see what happens with that. Moving on, we're gonna go to a game that we talked about a little bit on this last podcast here. We had LaSalle versus Queens, North Carolina, from Charlotte. Obviously, they moved up from the D2 level, and they are now in the ASUN. Just like Bellarmine, though, they're not eligible quite yet for any major postseason play, like tournaments or whatever. We were expecting a pretty close game with the Explorers and Queens, and we got a decent one, but LaSalle ended up winning 72-60, which is, I think, is a prediction that we both had. We might know what we're talking about a little bit on this Big Five podcast, so it's okay. We might know a little ball. Some stats I want to get into for the game, though. Queens actually out-rebounded LaSalle 39-24, which is, I know you talked about how it's more of a guard-heavy team for Queens, too, just like LaSalle, so I can't say I'm, like, insanely surprised, but at the same time, like, just because they are also a guard-heavy team, like, that's a lot. That's a very big margin to be out-rebounded by. However, they still won the game by the double digits, and I think the big reason about that is not because LaSalle outshot them by like 1%. It wasn't because of the shooting, which also you maybe would expect, because Queens had 24 turnovers in the game. That is going to lose you a game 10 times out of 10, unless somehow get lucky and you have all the star players in the world. But Queens doesn't have that. They're just moving up in the division. What were some of your takeaways from this game? Because it's a pretty big turnover margin, but also was it Queens that was, just making unforced errors, or was it the LaSalle defense led by Fran Dunphy that was causing them to make these errors?
So it was a little bit of both. 24. I mean, that's an outrageous number. You're never going to win with that many, especially with that margin too. LaSalle did a good job of taking care of the ball. And yeah, I mean, you don't want to turn the ball over a lot, but when there's a 16 turnover margin there, I mean, you're going to be all right. You're going to win those games. You're not going to win turning the ball over 24 times. It was a little bit of both. I thought for Queens, Kenny Dye, who I talked about, really a terrific point guard that I think a lot of people are going to end up hearing about. He had a bunch of turnovers. I felt like he was kind of forcing the issue. And when Queens, they run a really good offense. They're never stagnant. They're always moving. There's always something going on. But just felt like he was pressing a little bit and trying to force. And when that happens and you're dribbling into traffic and stuff like that, with guys like Brantley and Brickus, who's got very good quick hands for steals, like it's going to cause trouble. But it was a little bit of both. there was some plays where Queens was throwing the ball away, but you also have to give credit to LaSalle as well. When Queens was trying to penetrate the lane and then kick to somebody for a three, pass under to the block underneath the basket. Like they swarmed guys, they got their hands in there, they made catching the ball tough for Queens. So it was a little bit of both. And you have to give LaSalle credit; they got out in transition a little bit, and they were able to score a little bit. But this was a little bit of both for me. Something I just want to talk about. I want to make sure I give these two guys some shine. Anwar Gill and Deshaun Shepard, who we really haven't seen too much of for LaSalle this year. LaSalle was cold in the first half. Obviously, they were still up at halftime, but Josh Nickelberry was only 1 of 10 for this game after having two really good games to start the year. So it was really encouraging to see Anwar Gill get on the board, score 7 points, get in the lane a little bit, and make some shots inside the 3-point line. And then for Deshaun Shepard, he knocked down a three. He had a monster lob. I mean, this guy's got some serious pop and athleticism that I really think this LaSalle team needs at times. They need someone who can cover ground on the perimeter, who's got some bounce and athleticism and gives them a component that they don't really have. He was able to score a little bit in the first half. Anwar Gill was able to score a little bit in the first half. And it gave him the lead and really helped this team when you had some guys that were struggling in the first half. Now, obviously, Fousseyni Drame had a great game with 22 points. He played awesome and was a big reason why they won. But I just wanted to make sure I gave those two guys some shine. Anwar Gill in the Wagner game made a great play where he dove on the floor for a rebound or dove out of bounds. He made a great play to save the ball and keep the ball in LaSalle's hands. Then he was able to hit a corner three. So, it was good to see him get some more playing time. He definitely made the most of it. And between Deshaun Shepard and Anwar Gill, at the end of the first half, they gave his team a little bit of life that they needed to end up cruising to a double-digit victory that even when Queens dug at the lead, this team was still able to stay afloat, score the ball when they needed it to. Khalil Brantley was awesome with 18 points and 6 assists. That's a stat line that I'm telling you, you're probably going to be more accustomed to seeing from him as he's going to have the ball and can drive in the lane. And if you're not going to help over, I mean, this guy, he tried to dunk on like 3 people. I was like, I'm stood up off my bed when I saw him on the film. But this guy's going to attack the basket. He did a great job of that. Gave his team some buckets when they needed it. But all around, good win for LaSalle against the team that, even though they out rebounded LaSalle, Queens did. And I talked about that when I was talking about Queens. They're physical. They're going to make effort plays for rebounds. They're going to stick their nose in there, even as a smaller team. LaSalle still got the job done, forced a lot of turnovers, got timely scoring when they needed it to. They got some lifts from some other guys. So very encouraging win for the Explorers. They head to Jamaica for a game that they're going to play tomorrow. I wish I was there and I wasn't in the cold, but good. It's a good start for them to be 2-1. 2 good games at home that they won. They're now 2-1 on the season. So credit for them. It was a really good game. They forced a lot of turnovers. They got some lifts from some other guys in scoring. So all around, if you're Fran Dunphy, you got to be really happy with the way the last 2 games have gone for you.
Yeah, I mean, they're on a 2-game win streak, can't be mad at that. Someone we, like you just mentioned, that we highlighted on our last episode that could be, having a great game in this game was Khalil Brantley. Obviously 18 points. Wasn't the most efficient in the world. He was 8 of 17, but he played really well. Like you said, he tried to dunk on everybody. His athleticism was kind of something that we also highlighted, especially in this kind of game with the kind of track meet that it was setting up to be. Obviously, I don't think the scoring was insane. It was 72-60, so it wasn't like it was an insane game scoring wise, but he played very, very well. Fousseyni Drame also played very, very well. And this LaSalle team, a lot of people doubted them going into the season. Obviously, we're only 3 games in, so I don't want to completely overreact, but they have some dudes. Like Nickelberry didn't even play well, and they played well against the team that a lot of people thought could maybe upset them in Philly. And I'm just impressed. Obviously Fran Duffy's a very experienced coach. He's Mr. Big Five. He deserves the pedigree of being able to turn a team around, and he's starting to do that. And we'll see. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to overreact too much right now, but I'm very intrigued by this LaSalle team. Early in the season, I think this LaSalle team is the most intriguing team to me in the Big Five, because we know what Nova is. They're a very talented team. They're the best team in the Big Five that gets all the recruits. Temple is a very talented team that, obviously they upset Villanova, but they have their own issues that we obviously just talked about. And St. Joe's is, they're kind of middling, and Penn, they're starting to figure out a little bit, and we'll get into that in a second. But the LaSalle team, like they're gritty, they're tough, They play the Fran Dunphy Big Five way, and you love to see it. And I'm really happy. We're gonna break down LaSalle a lot more this year because they're a really fun team so far. And I'm very much looking forward to what they do in Jamaica, and we'll definitely get into that. I do want to go over this game that you were in attendance for at the DAC, the longest road trip of the year in college basketball, from University City to University City, Philadelphia. Penn going on the road trip to Drexel. I believe on their social media channels, Penn posted that it was a whopping 7-minute walk, if you can believe that. Although it was miserable weather on Tuesday night. It's been miserable weather a lot here in the city of Philadelphia. It was very, very cold tonight. Anyway, we're gonna get to the game though. Penn outlasted the Dragons 64-59. It was a back and forth. Penn was leading for most of the game, but they kind of started choking a little bit at the end. Drexel got within a couple possessions. Ultimately, Penn ended up pulling it out. Some stats I want to read here. Penn out-assisted Drexel 17-7, which you do love to see because it means they're passing the ball around. And, obviously, Drexel's not having much assists. That means defense is playing well, too. Jordan Dingle and Clark Slackert, 21 and 16 points, respectively, though neither shot very well. Neither of them shot over 40% from the game. I think it was Dingle was 40 and Slacker was 38.5%. It might be flip-flop, but I think that's what it was. And then Max Lorca-Lloyd actually providing some spark off the bench. He was 4 of 4, 8 points, which is some efficiency that they desperately needed, obviously, with those shooting numbers from Dingle and Slacker. And Penn was up 11, like I said, with 6.5 minutes left in the second half, and I got within a couple possessions. Obviously, they only won by 5. You were there at the DAC, Cove. What did you see from this game from Penn? What did you see from this game from Drexel, if we want to take a little bit of a City 6 perspective? Because it was Penn's first win of the year, and it was one that they desperately needed, but they still almost found a way to lose.
Yeah, it's good that they finally pulled out a win. They definitely needed that. There's no way they could fall to 0-4 with the game at West Virginia coming up tomorrow. But first of all, I just want to say I've been to every Big Five venue. I haven't been to DAC yet. So when I found out Penn was playing there, I said, hey, that's definitely one I want to be there for. So the DAC just got renovated. They put new video boards and stuff in there. It's actually like a really, really cool place to go see a game. It was packed. I mean, with it being the short walk from University City to University City, like it is right down 33rd Street. It was packed. It was a great atmosphere. There's a lot of people there. It got really loud in there. Penn really controlled this game in the beginning, mostly in part due to some cold shooting from Drexel. Their freshman point guard Justin Moore guy was shooting with a little in the basket in the first half. Felt bad for him because he was getting good looks at it. He started to hit some shots in the second half, but Penn really controlled this game. Jordan Dingle was playing well. They got some contributions from George Smith, and he said Max Lorca-Lloyd played well. And the key to me in this game was Drexel wants to feed the ball to their center, Amari Williams. He really is a good player. He's a huge, big, long, strong center, and they want to pound the ball inside and feed him and get him going. But with Nick Spinoso and Max Lorca-Lloyd, they really made him work. They were able to throw a lot of bodies at him. They were able to make Amari Williams work a lot to the point where, not that he was getting tired, but they're forcing him to make tough shots. They weren't just putting like one undersized guy on him. They were able to throw bodies at him, keep people fresh, and they were able to have him struggle a little bit. But this game started to get away a little bit from Penn when they went cold in the second half. Luke House, who is a transfer from California University of Pennsylvania, is a D2 guy. He's from Montgomery County. He's from the Norristown area, right by us. He came in the game and he provided a spark for them. I mean, this guy, his first shot was like 3 or 4 steps behind the 3-point line. I'm looking like, can he really hit that? And then he ended up hitting 3 threes in the game and really getting them back in there. So the crowd got behind the Dragons. The DAC was getting loud. Amari Williams made a big steal and dunked right on Nick Spinoso's head, and the place exploded. It was really a good game. But for Penn, even when they were cold in the second half and they weren't hitting shots and Drexel was chipping into that lead, Clark Slackert was huge for them. He had 3 huge threes for them, was really steadying for them on offense. And for me, was the reason that they won this game, because when the DAC started to get loud, the place wanted to explode. Drexel was in striking distance to take the lead, get it to a tie game, bring it in within a possession, he was able to knock down some big shots and quiet this crowd. And that's what they're going to need. They're going to need to play behind Clark Slackert and Jordan Dingle. Those guys are going to have to score for them, hit big shots. That's exactly what it was on Monday. Clark Slackert hit some huge shots for them, didn't allow the crowd to get back into it, and ultimately willed Penn to a big win here. Main stat I want to talk about here, if you're Drexel and you shoot under 50% from the free throw line on 20 attempts, not going to win many games that way. They left a lot of money. They left a lot of money on the table with the free throw line, and that's what ended up costing them in a close game where you have to give them a lot of credit because when you're down double digits like that, and Penn was humming on offense, running some good sets, they were getting contributions from some other guys. It's not going to work. Even when you claw yourself back into it, when you shoot that poorly at the free throw line, it's just not going to work. So it's a really good game. It was a great atmosphere. Like you said, the shortest road trip in college basketball. They walked there. They left. I mean, I only stayed for like 10 minutes after the game. And those guys already got their post-game meal and headed out. Like, you want to shower, go home. Like, you probably live closer to the DAC than you do to the Palestra in some cases. So it's cool because, literally you stand on the corner, 33rd and Market. You can see Franklin Field from the DAC where the Palestra's right in front of it. So definitely a fun little thing there with it being so close. A great rivalry. I hope that this is a yearly game, whether that's
I was just gonna say this needs to be played every year.
And not to mention, I'm pretty sure Drexel's going to play every Big Five team this year, but that's the way it should be. A team in the city, budget reasons, for regional reasons, like this should be a thing where Drexel plays at every team every year, which I think they actually do, with the exception of maybe Villanova, and then with Penn, who they haven't played a couple
years. I think they do play Villanova this year, though. And don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure I saw that.
They're going to play Temple. Obviously, they just played Penn, and I'm sure they got a game against St. Joe as well. But hey, this should be an every year thing. This should be an every year thing, especially with them being so close. It just makes total sense for everybody. So, but it was a great game, great atmosphere. I think I'm going to be back at the DAC too. I thought it was an awesome place to go see a game, not a bad seat in the house, but a much needed win for Penn. And when it seemed like the game was starting to get away from them, Clark Slackert came to save the day and came up huge. And that's how they're going to win games. That's how they're going to win games. Big time players make big time plays. That's what Clark Slackert did to seal a win from them and to stop Penn from going to 0-4. So good and much. We talked about that the last episode. It was a much needed win for Penn. They couldn't drop to 0-4 here. They snuck out with a win. So good for them. I believe that's the last Big Five team to get the win column. So we're all even now a little bit. People, everyone's got a win now, so they're back in the W column, and we'll see what happens. But they got the first one. You got to start there.
Got to start with one cope. Slackert's kind of been that steadying force for them because Dingle, we've talked about his injuries. He's been a little banged up, been a little inefficient. Not that Slackert was the most efficient in this game, but Slackert's kind of been that steadying force for them where if Dingle's not right, they can look to Slackert, and Slackert's going to hit big time shots. Like you said, he quieted down the DAC with some of his play down the stretch there in that game. It's exciting to see. It's not just Jordan Dingle for this Penn team. It's also Clark Slackert. Like I mentioned, Max Lorca-Lloyd going for the bench. That's huge for them because we talked about, maybe them not having enough scoring production outside of Dingle and Slackert. So it's going to be very interesting, especially once they get into conference play in the Ivy League, how that turns out for them. But it was a very important win for them against Drexel, against an inner city rival. And yes, they do need to play more games against Drexel every year, not just Penn, of course, but the entire Big Five. And we'll talk about Drexel a little bit on this podcast too. We're not going to completely exclude them. I know this is Big Five pod, but we're open to all City 6 schools here, so we'll talk more about that Drexel squad. But it was a very important win for Penn. They needed to get on the board, and very glad that they did because they've had some very close, other than the Iona loss, of course, but the other two losses against Mizzou and Towson were very close losses that they played well enough to win, but not quite in the end of those games. They didn't know how to close it out. They closed out this game, so good for the Quakers. You got the hat there. I know it's your Penn football hat. We can talk a little bit about them at the end, but good one for Penn. All right, that's all the games that we had to cover from previously in the week. Now let's get to the games for the weekend. And I kind of say that with an asterisk because all the games we're about to go over are all on Friday. They're all on Friday, November 18th. So we're gonna go over some of these, and these are some very interesting games, Cope. All of the Big Five teams that are playing on Friday are playing major conference teams. St. Joe's is off this weekend. They're not playing until early next week. So we're not going to talk about the Hawks right now, but we're going to get into a few games here. First game we're going to start off. It's probably the biggest game of the bunch. Two national programs. Villanova taking on Michigan State. Michigan State coming off their upset win against Kentucky in the Champions Classic. That was an extremely I said Izzo and impressive at the same time. That was an impressive win for Tom Izzo's squad. Usually we don't talk about Izzo until March because, it's January, February, Izzo, April. Not quite the case right now. It's November, but that was a very, very impressive win against a team that was returning the National Player of the Year in Oscar Tshiebwe. Obviously, John Calipari recruits very well, and he's one of the best coaches that we've seen in college basketball. And this Nova team lost to Temple. They beat LaSalle, obviously, in the first game, and then they won the third game of the season. What are we expecting from this game between a team that was ranked, isn't right now, and a team that isn't ranked, but probably will be come early next week?
So, a couple things here. So, obviously, I think Michigan State should be 3-0 with the very close loss to Gonzaga on the aircraft carrier in San Diego, which, by the way, we talk about another time. I think that's like the coolest thing ever.
It's so cool.
Wish I could go to one of them. It looks so cool on TV. But they easily could be 3-0 right now with wins over Gonzaga and Kentucky. Like this team's really good. Couple guys I just want to point out here that are going to be key for Nova to stop. So Joey Hauser, first of all, with 23 points in the win against Kentucky, shot the lights out, had a very good shooting game. They're going to have to run him off the 3-point line and not allow him to do that, because when you have a guy who can get hot and can shoot like him, one good game that can sink you. So they got to defend the 3-point line well, especially keep Joey Hauser in check. And then another guy that's been playing well is Mady Sissoko. Their center's had a great year this year. Played behind guys his whole career. He's a huge guy who's big, strong, and long, just like I said about Amari Williams. But he played behind Marcus Bingham last year, who had like airplane wings for arms, was another like really physically imposing big man. But now he's a starter for the Spartans. He's a big dude inside. He's had a great season so far. Now as the top dog there. It's 16 points in the win against Kentucky. It was big for them. So those two guys are key. But then it's the three guards in the perimeter that they're going to have to keep in check and stop as well. Tyson Walker, who's a transfer from Northeastern, he's a steadying presence for them as their main point guard. AJ Hogard, who's from PA, from the Downingtown area, is another guy that they're going to have to keep in check. And then Jaden Akins, who a lot of people think could be an X factor for this Michigan State team. Not really healthy to start the year. Had a reaction to an injury that he had, and it kind of kept him out. But he played in the Kentucky game, and he gave him some good minutes off the bench. So we'll see how much he continues to play, and is going to be key for them. But it's those guys especially. Then Malik Hall as well, experienced guy, can shoot it a little bit, as big, as physical, can get inside. This team's going to sit down and defend. And I just think it's a bad matchup for Villanova here. I don't think they're going to start 0 for 17 like they did the other night. But it's just that, and you saw it in this Temple game a little bit, like we talked about. Like, they're just kind of missing a ball handler here against a team that's going to come out and is going to defend very well in the perimeter and defend well as a team. Missing Gillespie, obviously it's huge shoes to fill, but with Daniels, with Slater, with Dixon, you know what you're going to get from them. They're going to defend, they're going to shoot, they're going to do what they do. They can play through Dixon a little bit. Daniels has been the guy with the ball in his hands a lot shooting, but how are these young guys going to fill in the cracks here? Brandon Housen, who's a freshman, came off the bench and was able to give Villanova some scoring pop in the second half of the last game. It just kind of comes down to me like, this is a really big stage against a really good team, against a really raucous environment at the Breslin Center in Michigan State. Who's going to step up here? One guy if one of those three older guys has a bad game, who's going to step up here? And this is a huge opportunity for those guys where I feel like Kyle Neptune is still kind of feeling out these young guys who didn't play a lot and are now playing a larger role now that Justin Moore and Cam Whitmore are out. Who's going to step up here and be that guy that's going to be playing a lot for this team deep in the year? This right here is a huge test, because you have Villanova, who lost to Temple, had a shaky performance against the Delaware State team that they easily should have blown out. That was close for them. That's not going to work going up against this team. I really don't like the matchup here. I think Michigan State could actually win this game easily, which I feel like I never say about Villanova, is that somebody will beat them easily. But look, this team's going to fight. They're going to the same Villanova principles like we always talk about. That's what's going to keep them in this game. I just think with the injuries that they have, with the uncertainty on the bench right now, this to me just smells like a Michigan State win, where it's going to be a very tough game for Nova going into a tough environment. Really good Gavitt games matchup here with the Big East and the Big Ten, but give me Michigan State here. It's going to be a tough game. I don't think Nova's going to get smoked, but this is a really, really tough matchup for them. And this Michigan State team is good. So we'll see what happens with these young guys, because they really need to start emerging and to see who's gonna take on a bigger role amongst these young guys. So that's something to keep our eye on. But I like Michigan State to win tomorrow, and I think they'll win pretty easily over this team. Not that it's going to be a blowout. I hate saying that if the team's going to easily win over
No,
Villanova.
I get it though.
But this is a really good team, a really good environment. They're coming off. They should be 3-0 with 2 top 5 wins. This is a really good team against a Nova team that's still banged up. So I'll take Michigan State tomorrow. Nova will hang tough. They'll stay in it like they always do. But this is a really, really good team that not only should be in the rankings the next time that they come out, this is a team that's going to make a run in March still. So really, really tough game for Nova. After I saw the last 2 games from them, I was like, oh man, having to go there, not good. Not good. It's going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the Breslin Center is not an easy place to play. East Lansing's going to be very loud on Friday night. And Kyle Neptune's going to have to get used to playing in that kind of environment. I don't think he's played in. I mean, I would have to obviously look back on this, but especially, this early in the season, playing in an environment like that against a team that good, coming off of a really good win from Michigan State against Kentucky, it's going to be difficult. And like you said, they don't match up particularly well with the Spartans. It's going to be a tough game for them. I think Michigan State's going to win somewhere in the 6 to 10 point range. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I do think they'll be the dominant force of that game. It's going to be tough for Villanova. They didn't play particularly well against Delaware State, like you said. Obviously, they dropped Villanova, and honestly, they didn't. I mean, outside of Caleb Daniels, who shot extremely well against LaSalle, they probably performed a little bit less to expectation than people were thinking against LaSalle too. So it hasn't been a great start of the year for Villanova, but this will be a big test for them. This is a very, very good Michigan State team with a very, very all-time good head coach at the Breslin Center in a hostile environment. We're going to see what happens. This is going to be a test for them. All right, moving on quickly. We have LaSalle taking on Wake Forest. This is also on Friday. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know a ton about this Wake Forest team, but they are a high major team. And anytime you have a team in a mid-major conference like the A10 taking on a team in a high conference like the ACC, you obviously have your biases there. And it'll be a big test for LaSalle because, like we were mentioning earlier, they're coming off 2 impressive wins against teams that aren't, great, particularly. Obviously, Queens is new. Wagner beat Temple, but they're still considered a low major team, and you kind of have to judge based off that. But they've been playing very well. They've been playing as a cohesive unit, which you love to see. And they've been getting contributions from a lot of people on the team. They're pretty deep. So what do you expect from this LaSalle team against a high major team, Wake Forest?
So just a little bit about Wake Forest, a little bit of background. Steve Forbes in his 3rd year there. He was the coach at East Tennessee State with the Buccaneers before getting there. But this is a little bit of a different roster from last year. You look at last year, Jake LaRavia was a 1st-round pick by the Memphis Grizzlies. He's now playing in the NBA. And then Alondas Williams also moved on to the pro ranks as well. So out goes Alondas Williams, out goes Jake LaRavia. In comes Tyree Appleby from Florida to play the point. And then in comes a big man from Delaware, from Westchester, Pennsylvania, and Andrew Carr. Obviously, Delaware, the Blue Hens run the table, winning the CAA last year. So they bring in some new guys that can score a little bit to go with Davian Williamson, who's been there, is a big-time scorer for them as well. So look, this is a Power 5 team. They're a good team. But at the same time, they might also be working through some things with some new guys here. I think LaSalle is going to beat them. I'll go down with, if they lose, they lose. I'll go down with it. That's fine. But I feel really good about the Explorers right now. I feel like there's a lot of positive vibes around them right now, a lot of good energy. The way they're playing is good. Their fight's great. They're very feisty, and they're going to be in a lot of games, especially when they have to play teams like this. They're going to be feisty. I think they're going to be in these games. So crash the glass, limit the turnovers like they did. If they can have under 10 turnovers as well, I think this is a game they can easily win. I think Josh Nickelberry has a big-time scoring game here and bounces back from his 1 for 10 game the other night. You know what you're kind of going to get from Khalil Brantley. And then I feel like it's like a different Drame brother each night almost that kind of gives him a boost there. You know, it was Fusini with the 22 the last game, and then Hassan had a great game against Wagner. So just feel like it's a different guy. But you're right. Like this is a deep team, and if Anwar Gill and Deshaun Shepard can be contributors for this team too, and give them some more bodies, this is going to be a deep and a feisty team. That if you can have fresh guys that are playing all the time, they're going to be able to play harder for you. They're going to be able to give it to kind of empty the tank if they know they don't have to play 40 minutes. So I'm going to go with LaSalle to pull up the upset here. I think there's a lot of good going for them right now. And there's a lot of positivity and a lot of good energy for a program that it just hasn't really had it the last couple of years. So I like the juice here with this team. I like the energy around them. I like what's going for this LaSalle team right now. I'll put it that way. So I think they pull off a little upset there in Jamaica tomorrow afternoon. I definitely gonna have to tune in that game when I'm coming home on the train or something like that. But I like what's going on with this team. I really do. And then at the same time, like, look, I know Fran Dunphy's been out of the sport for a while, but I would I would take in a lot of coaching matchups, I want him more than I want the other guy. So I like LaSalle to pull off a little upset here tomorrow, give him a nice win against the Power Five team. And then we'll see what goes from there. They're going to have more games in this Jamaica tournament, but give me LaSalle to pull off a little upset here tomorrow.
The crazy thing is, you were talking about all those players on LaSalle. You didn't even mention Andres Morero, and you didn't even mention Mamadou Decore. So they're a deep team. They could play. I think originally I was leaning Wake Forest. I think you might have convinced me to take the Explorers. And obviously, I'm pretty high on the Explorers, like we just talked about a few minutes ago. But I do like this. They're deep and they're well coached, and they seem to be rallying around Fran Dunphy in ways that maybe they haven't against with past head coaches. So it'll be very interesting to see. This is also a really good test for them. Obviously, they lost to Villanova. They didn't seem completely incompetent in that game, which was kind of a step up from years past, to be honest with you. And they beat Wagner, which is a team that beat Temple, and they beat a feisty Queens team, Queens, North Carolina. I'm bullish. I'm bullish on this LaSalle team. I'm excited to see what they can do against the high major team. We'll see which Drame brother steps up. We'll see which guard steps up between Brantley and Nickelberry. We haven't even mentioned Brickus yet in this podcast, I don't think. It's another guy that can step up. They legitimately have 8 or 9 guys that can contribute to a win on any given day. So it's very interesting to see. I'm really happy that this team's performing the way it is, because there's a lot of uncertainty going into the year. On not even just like going into the year as in like a month ago, but going into the year like in the spring and summer with the hire of Dunphy and who was leaving, who wasn't. Kind of like we talked about in our first episode. It's very exciting to see that this team's kind of coming together a little bit and they're playing well. So I'm very, very excited for that. One final game that we have on Friday, we have the Quakers Penn taking on West Virginia and Bob Huggins. Obviously that's a Hall of Famer, and that's a very tough environment to go into, especially for a team that hasn't been playing particularly well. They haven't been shooting particularly well, and Bob Huggins' teams usually are very, very well tuned defensively. What do you expect from this game? What do you think? Do you expect Jordan Dingle and Clark Slacker to kind of be the driving forces of this? Do you think they need to shoot more efficiently? Do you think Penn needs to get more help from their bench? What do you think is going to happen here?
So for me, literally the one thing that is going to determine this game is how well they handle the press. And unfortunately for them, they didn't handle it very well when Iona pressed them in the first game of the year. Now, I don't think Jordan Dingle was completely healthy for that game. I think he's healthier for this game.
But is he still completely healthy? He doesn't seem to be all the way back yet.
That I don't really think we'll know, until he starts playing like we think he can. But he hurt himself on like literally the first play of the Drexel game, and he came up hobbling and he was limping a little bit. But then he seemed like he was fine the rest of the game. I didn't really see any limitations or him having to get pulled out a lot. He still played a lot in that game. But the one determining factor is how this team's going to play against the press. They don't call them press Virginia for nothing. They're going to play up in your face. They're going to press. They're going to play the entire game. They're going to pressure you and try and force you into turnovers and play well in the defensive end. So this is another team that's got a lot of turnover coming from last year. So you look at the center spot. They bring in Trey Mitchell, who was at UMass in the A-10, goes to Texas last year. He now comes over. Eric Stevenson, who was at South Carolina last year, via Washington, via Wichita State. He's on his fourth school now in 5 years. He's now
Jeez.
there. And then they also bring in kind of the perfect guy for this West Virginia press, a good, quick defensive guard in Joe Toussaint from Iowa, who now is on West Virginia. This team's going to press. We know what they're going to do. They're going to play defense. They're going to make it. They're going to make life hell for you for these 40 minutes if you don't have to play more than that. But the one determining factor on how this game is going to be played is how they handle the press. Because when Penn got sped up by the Iona press and they're turning the ball over, they're taking shots that are not the best that they could get on a possession early in the shot clock, kind of wasting possessions, not really making the defense work. That's where this game is going to come down to. So we'll see how they handle the press. Didn't look too good against Iona, and if they play like that, game's over. West Virginia's going to beat them. But that is the determining factor in this game. How will they handle the press? Because it's not going to go off unless they just shoot the lights out and they continue to go up and down and destroy this team, which doesn't happen with the press. It's going to stay on the whole game. It all comes down to how they handle it. Can they get into good offensive sets after? Can they run their half-court offense, or are they going to turn the ball over, make it a track meet, run up and down, and play the way West Virginia wants? That's what we're going to see here, and that's where the game is going to be determined. They are going to get pressed from the opening tip. They're going to get pressured from the opening tip. It just matters. How are they going to handle that? If they're going to turn the ball over and take bad shots, then the game's over for them. But if they're able to break the press, not turn the ball over, and get into their half-court offense and run it, then they have a shot here. But again, it's another tough game. I mean, this is a tough schedule that Penn's played so far. I give credit to these guys. Even if it's by games where you're getting paid a lot of money to go out there. Like I commend guys that do this. I don't like teams that play cupcake schedules in the non-conference. I like teams that give themselves a grind and they give themselves a hard schedule because you're only going to be better for it. So this is another team where it's like, hey, they're good defensively. They're going to press us. We need to see how we match up and we're only going to be better for it to see where we improve. So I like what Penn's doing with the schedule, but that's literally where it's going to come down to. We're going to see how they handle the press, and how they handle the press is going to determine how this game is going to go.
Yeah, unlike the SEC football conference this week, we're going to actually have some tough non-conference games for Penn. They've actually done scheduling well, unlike the SEC. Listen, it's still football season too, but it's also Big Five season. And yes, this is going to be a very interesting game. Like you said, the half-court offense is going to be very important for them because if they can break the press, which is a very big if, it's a very big if because they did not against Iona. But if they can break the press against, West Virginia and Bob Huggins, once they get in the half-court offense, they can make things happen. They have the shooting to do it. We talked about Jordan Dingle. Clark Slackert's been that guy, especially from shooting ranges. Like he can be one of those guys that they just can't guard if they're in a zone, or if they break the press and they're in transition and he gets an open look. It's going to be very hard to stop Clark Slackert. And if Dingo's healthy, it's going to be even harder to stop him too. So it's going to be really interesting. I kind of think West Virginia wins this game by double digits because I just don't know if Penn can break the press like that. They have to prove it to me. If they can prove it to me this game, I'll think much differently about the Quakers. But they almost blew the one game that they actually won against Drexel. They lost a close one to Towson. They lost a close one to Mizzou. And they got absolutely walloped against Iona. And Iona is probably the most similar team to West Virginia that they've played so far this year. So, I think Penn is in the stage right now where we know that they have talent. They know that once they get into Ivy League play, like we've talked about, they can definitely make some noise. But right now they have to prove it. Prove it to me that you can be that team that we thought you could be going to the year. So that's what I'm expecting from Penn this game. I do think it'll be a loss for them, though. That's what I'm saying. I don't know what you think, but I think West Virginia is going to come on top in this one.
So I would agree. Again, we got to see how they handle the press because the one time that we saw them do it, it wasn't pretty. And that completely flipped how that game was going. Like this wasn't like Iona pressed them from the tip and it was lost. Like Penn was in control of that game when they were able to set their defense, play in the half court, and make it a slow game for Iona, who's not a great shooting team and not a great half-court offensive team that wants to run up and down and get easy baskets. Like, that's how the game flipped on its head. So if you're going to see a team that's going to do that from the opening jump, we have to see it before we can start saying like, okay, they can break the press, they can play this way. Like that's just how it's going to be. But that's how you know West Virginia is going to play.
And I
So
guarantee you they're going to
a
press from the
clash in
jump too.
style. What'd you say?
I said I guarantee you they're going to press from the jump too.
That's what they
And
do.
I guarantee you they're going to look
They've
at
always
the
done.
Iowa game. I guarantee you they're going to look at the Iowa game and say that's what we need to do to beat Penn.
Of course, as a great coach would. So
Yes,
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure very early on in that game we will see what the outcome is going to be because West Virginia is going to play that way the entire game. It's just what they do. So I'm saying like probably in the first 10 minutes, that
I was
first quarter of the
literally just going
game,
to say
we'll see what the result is kind of going to be here.
it's going to be determined in the first 10 minutes of the game. That's what I think too. That's all I got though. We have a very exciting slate of college basketball on Friday, but not much else after that. It's kind of a lighter week as we get toward Thanksgiving here. Early next week, we have some other games that we'll definitely get into, and we'll be very excited to bring you guys that. But that's pretty much all I have for the weekend games. Do you have anything else?
So yeah, guys are traveling. It's about to be feast week is awesome. I mean, and this might be a scorching hot take because I know football and Thanksgiving are synonymous with each other, but like we got to consider Thanksgiving also kind of being a college hoops holiday at the same time. Not fully. I get it. It's football. It's Thanksgiving. It's what we do. But like, there's a ton of college basketball on this whole week. There's going to be games going for hours every single day of feast week coming up. But like you said, we have a little bit of a break here. Teams are traveling. LaSalle's in Jamaica. St. Joe's is going down to Florida for the Sunshine Slam, or they're going down south somewhere. People are going in and out, going to their feast week tournament. So we have a little bit of a lull here to catch up on some stuff and to catch our breath because next week there's a lot going on next week, which is awesome. It's what we love. And feast week is awesome. It kind of is the thing for me that's like college basketball is back because there's games on all day. But yeah, that's all I got. Last thing, try to stay as partial as possible on the show. Obviously, I have my Penn hat on. I even have my Penn sweatshirt on today because it didn't get changed when I got home from my internship. I'm currently an equipment intern with Penn's football team. Sick brag. Don't mean to talk about myself because that's not really important. But Penn plays their last game this weekend. Potential history in the Ivy League if Penn beats Princeton at their place on Saturday and Harvard beats Yale. We are going to have a 4-way tie for first place in the Ivy League. Half the league is going to be co-champions. I don't believe that's ever happened before. I think the only time it's happened is when they had 3 people split the title. So potential history going on in the Ivy League. Let's go Quakers. I want to be a champion. I want the team to be champions, even if you got to split it with 3 other teams. But let's go Quakers. Like I said, try to stay impartial, but I didn't get changed when I got home. It was cold. I wanted to wear my beanie. So let's go Quakers. I hope they win on Princeton's a tough game. They just lost their first game against Yale last week in the league. So we'll see what happens here because we need some help. Not only does Penn have to win, but we need some help to be champions. But let's hope it happens and we can get Penn. I believe it's going to be title number 19 for them if they win the Ivy League this year. So hopefully we can add it. We can keep stacking. They can add another one to the collection. But yeah, potential history. I know we're getting off topic here with football, but potential history going on here in the Ivy League. Maybe the only time you'll ever see 4 teams split a title if everything goes the way that we want it to.
Listen, Big 5 basketball can also translate to Big 5 football. We're pulling for the Quakers. So we're going to hope they pull out a win in Princeton this week. We want some history being made for not only the Quakers, but for you personally as well. I think that would be very cool for you to experience. Obviously, you've been with them the entire season. So that would be awesome. For me, I don't really have much. Texas absolutely blew out Gonzaga the other night. That was kind of a shock to see in the college basketball world. UNC struggled a little bit with Gardner Webb the other night, which is also a little bit of a shock to see in the college basketball world. And Julius Randle actually stepped up on a basketball court for once too, which, I don't want to digress too much on my Knicks, but we're just not going to go there.
Quick point about Texas to get you off talking about the Knicks who gave up like 1 billion points to the Thunder.
We don't need to talk about it.
Like a week ago. Shouldn't surprise. To be honest with you, shouldn't surprise you with Texas. That team's scary good.
Yeah,
they got Tyrese Hunter, who I thought was like. If you told me that you thought Tyrese Hunter was the best player in the portal this year, I wouldn't bat an eye at it. That guy was a beast as a freshman at Iowa State on the offensive and defensive end, and the way he shot threes last night too. I mean, if that's the way he's going to play, that's a Final Four good team right there.
They
their
proved
defense.
themselves.
Dylan Mitchell was dunking everything last night. I think he had 3 straight dunks in the second half. Like, if that team's on, and it was the Moody Center just opened up. That's the new arena they have down there in Austin for the Longhorns. But that place was loud last night. Seemed like a tough place to play. And man, if that Texas team is humming and they're hitting shots the way they were, scary, scary good. But I don't think
Watch.
that should surprise you with them, because they're good enough to knock off teams like that. Like, that's a really, and especially with Marcus Carr and Tyrese Hunter, that's a great 1-2 punch of guard that not a lot of teams have. So I don't think that should surprise you, because that team is that good. They are as good as advertised. Like, Texas made the tournament last year, but I didn't feel like Chris Beard got to bring in everybody he wanted to. He brought in some freshmen, he brought in some transfers. Like, this team is
This could be the team.
very good if they're all on, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was just shocking to see Gonzaga get blown out like that. But yeah, it was that Texas team's gonna be something. We'll definitely keep an eye out on them too. Yeah, but that's all I got. Thank you all for tuning in and following and liking and subscribing as always. Make sure to keep doing that as well. Follow us on our social media channels. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. We're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify now. If you missed that announcement on Twitter and Instagram, we posted both. So make sure if you don't want to see all this, if you don't want to see all that, make sure you go check out the audio only versions as well. And yeah, thank you all for the love. We've been getting so much love. I really, really do appreciate it. And Cope, I know you do too. So thank you all for showing us the early love, and we're gonna keep bringing you the best Big Five content in Philly. Don't you ever doubt that. So with that being said, I was gonna say without further ado, that's when you start. We're ending. With that being said, we will see you all early next week, and let's have a great weekend of college basketball. Peace.